welcome everyone for to another episode of Future of Data podcast. This is week 25, another odd numbered week. That means there is a newsletter coming up, and we know how it works. Whenever there's a newsletter, there is Mr. or Miss or at least Tao sending something to all of us to chew. And that means we are back online, me and Maria discussing about
Hey,
what Tao has in store for us. Sorry, Maria, I missed it. What are you saying?
I just was saying hi.
Huh? So it's a beautiful painting, by the way. It's
Oh yeah, it's
nice.
just some abstract, colors and art.
And I think we should thank you because every week you either show us some good flora at the background, good sort of. You are always with some amazing backgrounds.
Oh,
So
thank you so much.
like I'm one of the bore guys with just one thing still at the back of my. But yes, welcome to the podcast. And how was the week?
Yeah, it was a very interesting week. Very exciting. Lots of things going on in June. So summer is here.
Yes,
Summer
summer
is
is here.
here. Yeah, and we have a
Yes.
great newsletter this week. I really enjoyed a lot of the pieces on here, so I'm excited to talk about them.
It's actually it's funny. Like today, even I learned something from this. So I think it's even and Maria, we talked a lot about this behind the podcast or sort of above and beyond it. That even we
Yeah.
we got to learn a lot because of Tao. It's actually it's fascinating that like what all is happening in the world of data. Like sometimes I used to think that I know enough that I can talk, but oh boy, like am I missing on a lot of action? So it's good that
Yeah,
at least
I just told someone the other day, if they really are bored and want to blow their mind and expand, the stuff that they're already learning about, you have to sign up to the newsletter because it pulls so many great gems from different places, but they all seem to be connected.
yes, it's fascinating. And I think let's see what's the theme of this newsletter comes out to be. And to our audience, I think who don't know about Tao, who are just joining in. So Tao is our AI algorithm that we created to help coach each one of us. So one of the tasks that we give Tao right now is to find content to our communities, and Tao is sending this newsletter, and the job is we will not touch Tao for next 6 months. So we are I think now in a month and a half on Tao's, and we will just see whatever mistakes Tao makes. We will just pretty much eat it up, and once we have substantial data, then we can go back and fix and see how this AI is turning and benefiting us from that perspective. And we do see some sort of repetition sometimes, some theme mismatch sometimes, some goofy things, and stay with us on that because I think right now we will let it slide for another couple of months because we the main element is how, because it could be very well if people are engaging on that content. So Tao said, okay, let me just re-give it again. So there could be that. So we know what's going on at the back end, but stay with us till this thing is fixed. And I think it still has tons of other nuggets for us to chew. And that probably will just go over some of those fun stuff. Maria, what do you think?
Yeah, no, it's just great how it's organized so that you can get some local events. You can see what tools and tutorials are available, and then have some great ideas from the podcasts and the videos and the little gem, facts of the day and little tips of the day. They're good to have, just to see what other things that we can involve here that are related that you might not have thought about. So
That's true.
it's a great resource.
Let's jump right in. A lot of action today.
hmm Yeah, I like how it always starts off with something funny with the quote, or a comic, and it definitely sets the mood for the rest of the newsletter. So we have a comic here, about data interpretation.
Right. And I think it's just so to our audience, I think it's another Dilbert because the internet is full of Dilbert and cat videos. It looks like.
Yeah.
So Tao always sort of picks one or the other. So I wonder when will Tao pick a cat video with. I think data science is still so that means it's not mainstream yet, because once data science get into the cat videos or cat
Yeah.
memes, I think then we have done it. Then pretty much it's the awareness is done. So maybe that's we still have a long way to go. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few that like touch on a reach. There's like this cat perpendicular little funny thing. Yeah, so and the actual cats were like in the cushions perpendicularly. I mean, there's a couple, but yeah, I'm sure there'll be more coming.
That I think that would be awesome. So let's see. But Dilbert we all know as working. That's
Yeah,
Dilbert is cat for working professionals when it comes to internet, pretty much. So it's like thanks to Scott Adam. I think he's just flooded. He's just giving us like kind of an oxygen lifeline for professionals who are frustrated with their work. I think a lot of so
yeah.
so
Definitely
anyhow.
need an outlet to talk, right, about it, or
Yes.
at least to complain, vent and complain for a moment, because uh, so that steam doesn't build up and explode. You have these little comics, and they reach on things that we get frustrated about.
Right,
So
exactly. And I think one of the thing that come in this week's cover of the week was, so it's a Dilbert cartoon in which Dilbert's boss is saying, "Hey, do a cost analysis that we want to have a data center," and he says no matter what data says, the analysis should say that we need data center. So it says, so he was saying that so Dilbert asked the boss, "Hey, remind me, why am I doing the college then?" And the boss says that because someone convinced you. So I think it's a beautiful take on bias
yeah,
that we talk a lot in data, right? So or analysis is as good as its analyzer or or as its designer. And I think that's pretty much
yeah,
it just taunting that particular sort of touting that particular element that there is, if you have a bias, your data will have bias hopefully, because that's how you designed it, and your analysis
yeah,
will justify that bias. So I think that's so it's a very interesting thought, by the way. So it's a massive problem, we all know, we all face. That's why my kid is the best, remember. So so yes, so I think that's our model.
yeah, yeah.
So now let's go to the and Maria, do you have anything to say on the cover of the week?
So, well, I just wanted to add there's so much in data, you can pick from so many different aspects when you're looking at it, that, the end goal is definitely what you want to have in mind. So those things are related, and that's always going to create a bias, right? So, we want to try to make sure it's clear what our intentions are, so that the biases can also be transparent. And I guess that's what the boss is kind of doing, is making it transparent. Hey, you went to college, somebody convinced you, that's just how things
And I
go.
think, and Maria, you actually raise a good point about end goal, right? So even like in lots of our conversations, so I can recall a recent conversation as early as like 2 months back. I was with the one of the businesses, or one of our clients, and the executive there asked us to um, justify an expense, and say, okay, analyze that. So that it's the whole statement in itself was like pretty biased. So I said, okay, if you need to justify, that means like it's not a fair analysis, right?
Hmm.
So he said, yeah. And I think so that I think all and from our point of view, we just thought that it's a cultural thing. So if the culture permits having this unbiased analysis, just go in. If not, then you just have to abide by it till the point you can make some sense out of that. So I think that's something interesting that we saw recently. That the leadership is asking, hey, justify what we did or what we are about to do with your data.
Right, yeah, because if you're just trying to justify a profit or trying to um, support some statement or argument, then you're that's what you're working with.
So I
So
think
knowing all of
so I
those
think you
things.
did a so end goal. I think if you have an end goal, that itself, I think we can call, we can say, so it's a, and by the way, I think one of the recent podcasts we did with one of the executive at Akamai, it will come out, I think maybe sometime next month. So I like what his leader, who's now a CEO, asked him to do in Akamai. He said, "Hey, I wanted to design a forecasting model without considering the past." So
Mm.
that was interesting. So he said, so
Hmm.
his point was no, like, because obviously I know that the trend is going on, the trend probably will continue, but definitely we want something which is unbiased and which doesn't have the influence on the past. And because, and the way he, I think that would be a fascinating podcast, by the way. I think once, probably it'll come out sometime early, mid next month, or early next month. But I think some of the leaders, they just get it. They say, okay, like, make sure your analysis, but so end goal is to have an unbiased model that is not using any sort of preconceived notion. So I think that's so, but some leaders are pretty much, hey, justify this or justify that. So that's definitely a divide on the thinking
Yeah,
of
because if
leadership.
you're in business, there are time crunches and deadlines and
Yeah.
all these things that, a lot of other moving parts. And just to have, and this is interesting because it goes into the panel discussion that's later on in the newsletter. And they kind of touch on this a little bit, about that process and how um, the business aspect of it drives those intentions because there are so many other moving parts and they're trying to get a handle on managing all those things through communication. So
That's interesting. No, yeah. So that's that. By the way, that's a good drive from Dilbert to getting into some serious stuff. So, okay. So now let's get to some of the events that our web folks could enjoy. What I'll
yeah.
suggest. So I think there were three that's pointed out. One is a webinar on CRM, managing relationships using Nutshell, Salesforce, and Pipedrive. The other is live analytics class using R, Tableau, and SAS for business.
Hmm.
And then there's a Pix4D user workshop. And I had no clue what Pix4D is. I think when I said, "What the hell is Pix4?" I've never heard about Pix4D. So for our audience, I think it's a drone mapping software. So it's like
Hmm.
a very cool looking UI, and drone is a very in thing, and you can just pretty much analyze and say, okay, give it command, and the software is very intuitive, and it connect to the drone software, and you can just load it on the drone, and drone just go on that periphery and do things and come back. Fascinating stuff. So at least, this is, I don't know how much of it is data or analytics, but it is a must watch for nerds, I would say, like who are
Yeah, we
interested
got to
in
be aware, right, of the
those.
different tools and be aware so that whatever problem you can kind of have a quick, oh, I think I remember there was something that we could use for that or
Right, yeah.
whatnot. So it's always good to learn them,
and,
what
and
things are doing.
absolute, I think that's absolutely rightly said. And there is also, I think, there's also a webinar on CRM, Nutshell, Salesforce, and Pipedrive. And to our audience, I think CRM is one of the topics that, although it's in itself an industry, but I think customer experience, or whether you talk about sales and marketing, I think they are the biggest funnels that uses data analytics for, or customer analytics, or analytics, for that matter. So I think it's fascinating to see how these platform works, because that gives you a lot of ideas on how your sort of architecture, because these guys had been doing analytics for eons, right? So the first time there was a business on planet thinking of growing, they all they thought about is how I can multiply this, how I can analyze my current sales and customer, and then sort of multiply it over and over to get the scale that the business want. So the model is mature, the architecture is mature. So if you're working at some random use cases, right, this is one of the very solid and robust platform that is out there today that you can learn from. So I think that's why I can see why Tao picked it. To be very frank, I think that's what even I'm thinking that in sales analytics or relationship building and all that, I think this is a good enough webinar to check. What do you think, Maria?
Yeah, that pool of emails and addresses and your customer base is, super important to monitor and expand. So you definitely need to have some familiarity with the tools that work the best, you
Yeah,
know?
and I
And
think and there is a free live data analytics class using R, Tableau, and SAS. This is going to be interesting. I think R and SAS, so how they work together. This is, I think, I again a good course, and I think I realize it is embedded in a meetup. So I think that's it's always puzzling to me why a meetup post a webinar. But I think this is one of the cases that God knows the answer of. So, but I think it's a good enough conversation to be part of. It's good enough to sort of topic to check out and see how data analytics happens. And I think good pick, by the way.
yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Now let's get to the analytics week bites. These are some of the blogs Ta- that are published or shared on Analytics Week platform, and Tao's job
Hmm.
is to pick it up. And by the way, when Tao picks all these things up, so Tao is, and that's what we know. The last we programmed this. It's not programmed to have a theme of a newsletter. It just we just ask is okay, just think about the pattern and trends and clicks and whatever, and then find me the best content. And then there is also a relation to a particular keyword that Tao picks.
Yeah.
So these are some of the, so there is I think he picked some of the interesting blogs around big data. I think that's what I'm thinking that this theme looks out to be, that there was a um, basically introductory blog on big data on
Yeah, this is a good introduction one. I was going to say that
and
too.
I think and very good introduction, man, as you rightly said, Maria. It just talks about, are you ready for this? Like, so it's saying, the blog itself explains what's going on, how much of it is going on, where all it is going on, so you can understand and see, okay, can I be part of it? And then from that perspective, definitely an interesting conversation. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, it just goes over like basics of data storage and numbers so that you can kind of have a scope of the amount. And this is a 2015 article, so there is a lot more data than it was, talking about now.
Hmm, that's true. Okay, so and then the next one is Google loses data as lightning strike. I think this is like a it's a, I think it's a news of from, I think it happened in Belgium or something. I think there was lightning, and it's I think it's just a news that it picks, and the idea
Yeah,
was, yeah.
they talked about the risk, because it was hit or it was nearly hit 4 times by lightning, and the risk of the data being lost is low, but you definitely have all kinds of reasons that you need to store and back up the data somehow.
Right.
And lightning is another one.
Yes, yes. I think backup is important, and it's funny. So three vendor leads the wave for big data predictive analytics. I think this is another. This is, I think, it's one of the older blogs. I guess it talks about IBM, SAS, and SAP being the top three leaders in leading the wave on big data predictive analytics. And I think most of these guys are still, we could easily say that on the lead of bringing that change in the ecosystem. So
Hmm.
a good read on basically, I think it was a published report, and it just deciphering that report on which vendor fared how much, and what was the score. So it's a good way to understand which all vendors exist, and how much of what are, why they exist, and what's going on, and from there on get a perception on, if you want to look for solution, who could be a good guy or a good vendor to pursue.
Yeah, I think they're still relevant today, so
Yes,
these
these
ones
are
are at the
still.
top of the list. So
I agree. I agree. Now let's talk about NewsBytes, and I think NewsBytes is another interesting. So this is the news that's happening around the world. So this could be like more relevant in what's happening today, and In this one, I think Tao is meant to pick a particular keyword and then go out and look for that. And I think it talks about that keyword at the end of the each news. So one is data science, one is IoT, and one is cybersecurity. So I think this is a very sort of diverse combination of three more important topics of today. In data science, it's talk about how data science and rocket science will get humans to Mars. I think this is no surprise to us that whatever whatever space exploration is happening, they are again one of the primal user or the early users of data science. And I think that's why in one of the conversation I talked about how an astrophysicist job was to just look at this anomaly, just hip like in any sort of any picks in the signal and then analyze what's happening. So they are, I think they are one of the early data scientists to understand radio wave. We heard a kind of a noise and then figured where the noise is coming from. So so I think that's it. Just this article talks about how data science would get us to Mars. What do you think, Maria?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, NASA this week is doing a workshop for the whole week, or a camp kind of thing for the whole, a rocket science camp for the whole week. And so there's like 150 universities and students and so forth that are participating in these kind of activities. And I'm sure there's all kind of data science that has to be part of the discussion, because they're going through a very intense, which is great because it's the first time they've done something like this. So
Right, interesting. Yes, yes, and I think I remember. I think there was an executive I talked to, Bill Simmons from DataZoo, and shout out to Bill. I think his background was to figure out a mission to Mars. So whenever I hear about the word Mars, his name came to always comes to my mind, and his job was to
hmm
calculate the risk,
hmm
and it was fascinating. So he I think he discussed this in one of our panel as well. I guess I don't remember, but I think at least in one of the private conversation he did discuss that. So what he was trying to figure out is he's just calculating the risk of each parts. So each rocket element, each wind element, and each sort of thrust gas, and just creating a model that aggregate that risk to calculate the overall risk of a mission to Mars. So that was like fascinating, like how he's trying to gauge the budget and the risk associated with this particular, like out of the or kind of a moonshot or Mars shot project now. So I think it was fascinating.
Yeah, so tomorrow they're going to be launching their experiments from this week's worth of work.
I
And
think
it's like a rocket that's 36 feet long, and it's like 667 pounds. So, I'm sure
wow.
we'll hear about that on the news. So that's exciting.
So where is this happening? Do you know?
And it's, well, NASA, so I'm sure it's in their headquarters.
Okay.
Colorado, well, yeah, it just says that in the
Okay.
article. So,
Okay. So I think let's so we'll just uh, basically we will post the link if we find. I think this is going to be amazing for people to check out. I think definitely. So good.
there's some inspiration there for sure,
It's
you know.
yes, yes. I'll be watching it if definitely. So the next news is about the Internet of Things. Is mainly mainly for firms for now, and I think this is one of the write up that Tao picks from Slovakia. So
hmm
basically, it just there's I think it got published in the local journal called Slovak Spectator, and basically what it's saying is that IoT, and it's even relevant for major cities in some cities in US as well, by the way. So it's just saying that IoT is still not mainstream, that it's still not commodity yet, and it's still sort of the major bells and whistles are with enterprises or the businesses, and they're using it. And so I think that's a yeah, well, we know that. So I think it's a good take that it just talks about what's the gap that still IoT or these sensors and the tools needs to cross to bring this IoT capability to houses and sort of to make us like more IoT driven family.
Yeah, and it goes through some of like production and manufacturing,
Right.
which is something that's super important for having all of these sectors work and these networks work together. So it's a really good read if you're interested in how to improve cities and how the data is helping with the services that are related to daily life. And
No, I think that's a good take, Maria. I think yes, it's a beautiful read for small businesses, for medium like for businesses who wants to understand that how these sensors or how this data could be used, and then cities too. By the way, I think that's well picked there. Of how so it gives you a perspective on sort of what some of the other ones are doing and what they are feeling about this topic that we are hearing a lot nowadays because of our ecosystem on IoT side. So let's get to the next news. Let's talk about Trump's science executive order on cybersecurity. So so basically, um, this so I think this article when it was picked up, maybe it's a gap. So it's the current news is I think they postponed it. I guess it's still not signed yet. But I think but it's a good step. Like we should know cybersecurity is we know what's happening in the world of cybersecurity, right? So we are seeing the impact of it almost every day on the news, whether it's political, whether it's business, whether it's I think there was recent news that GOP got hacked, I guess. GOP's database leaked 200 million or something profile or something. There was some news that I was reading today. So it's a critical area, and government needs to intervene. They need to sort of uh, create laws and bylaws and sort of create those to to help us even like to create kind of a guideline for our offensive or defensive strategies, right? So it's a great platform. That yes, Maria, what do you say?
yeah, well, the executive, right, like you said, the executive order is not signed yet, and it proposed just a federal improvement of national cybersecurity. However, it's very controversial because there are lots of different divisions that include local and state levels for that cybersecurity to really be um, defending against those risks that they're afraid of. So
Right.
those pieces have been left out of the executive order. So there's a lot that is controversial about it, but I definitely agree that some steps are necessary to move forward. I
Right.
just hope that they have better advisors.
That's true. And I think that's why I think in government's cases it's or in political case it's always going to be controversies, right? Either this side or that side. But I think any step in the right direction is a right step, right? So I think definitely there could be amendments to come later on, but yes, cybersecurity needs to be checked. It is creating a havoc in local economies, in global economies. I think 2016 was a very depressing year when it comes to sort of understanding the data analytics and how the cybersecurity is shaping the world. I think it is messing up with democracy. It's messing up with the social structure, the socioeconomic structure, and it's I think it's something that government should intervene for sure because because they have the common interest of people, right? That's at least their people, and from their perspective they are the best judge or at least the best regulators to understand to preserve their interests. So I think that's why it's definitely a good step. We should do something about it for sure. Excuse me. So let's get to the featured course. So Lean Analytics Workshop by Alistair Kroll and Ben Yoskowitz. So shout out to Alistair Kroll and Ben
Oh yeah.
Yoskowitz for an amazing work in teaching businesses how to stay lean with analytics. I think a couple of years back, the people that we're talking analytics with are pretty much kings and lords. So it's just the matter of like all the big companies who have big setup infrastructures, only they can afford these capabilities. But it's amazing that how Alistair and Ben designed a framework based on lean startup model of quickly pivot and validate the model and before solidifying it, or in a way amplifying analytics in many aspects. It's interesting that that how they and this is one of the workshop, highly rated workshop for it's for any individual from business who's trying to create a data science practice to read. And by the way, his book, go and grab it just for the heck of it. I think get it on your birthday, maybe on a Father's Day gift, whatever. Just get that book. I think that book is a must have, and maybe use it as a pillow. But whatever, just have that book. Just have that book. It's a very good book. What do you think,
Yeah, it
Maria?
definitely goes through, yeah, because it goes through that, touching about the customers and the tools and performance and the related topics that are necessary to focus on for both public and private sector and working, having them collaborate together. So,
Interesting. Yes, yes. So let's go to the data science for business book. So featured read, and I think beautiful book, by the way. So it's not for technical folks, but it's it's technical folks who want to understand business, and but definitely a must have for businesses. Again, very highly rated book by two amazing authors, Foster Provost and Tom Fawcett. They have been talking about data science for quite some time, and I think this is a good book. It helps businesses have understand the analytical way to think. It's a it's a very good uh, introductory book for businesses to explain them how they can have analytical thinking, how they can understand what data could do, understand the capabilities from data, so they can get that mindset, help convince leadership how to structure teams, how to structure environment, like how to look at the problem from analytical standpoint. Again, a very good book to check out. What do you think, Maria?
yeah, and it identifies how, the data that you're needing fits your organization and what you can do with it, and kind of puts those things into perspective so you can definitely have a way to organize, like you said, think and organize through what do you need to do to start this process. So very good for those that are ready to like work to improve with their businesses through using data science.
Right, and good job there, by the way, Foster and Tom. I think keep giving us good stuff. So now let's talk about tips and tricks of the week, and I think this is one of the thing that fix the culture, spread awareness to get awareness. So it talks about an interesting perspective. I think it talks about people not talking about things. It talks about how people are could actually have a conversation, and this is pretty much what Maria, even we are trying to do with Analytics Club, right? To to to,
Yeah.
to try to carve out sort of conversation in the community. So the more businesses and people talk, the more they learn about things. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a great tip and trick for the week. It's talk about the culture and awareness, and I love the Analytics Club for that because it helps to connect everyone together on that cultural level so they can start having these conversations that might not be talked about or that are super like parallel to each other but in different disciplines. And so just having the awareness and keeping those conversations moving will also keep the ideas flowing. And so then you can start really brainstorming and working on top of that. That awareness is just something I like to introduce into as much as possible. I can
Right.
to all of the different events or the things that we're speaking and doing, because I think the more that we can think on this level or use a scientific method, the more that we can have better decisions just in all areas of life. So
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that has been even our mission as well with Analytics Club, and and I think there's also it also hints at one of the things that we talk a lot about in our podcast and in our conversations, that since data science talent is at it's it's at high demand, and there are less number of people who are actually good at this craft. So there is almost like every good data scientist you talk to, they're strained, they're overly stressed out with the amount of work and amount of learning and teaching and selling and buying they have to do within the companies. I think
Mhm.
this is one of the solution to that. I think because and we talked about this. I think recently I talked to I was giving a commencement talk at Northeastern, one of the graduate class, and for data science, and my pitch to those super smart kid was that you have to understand that it's your responsibility to bring everyone to the same page. It's your responsibility to start that club and create awareness within the company, because you can't do it alone, and your boss is already confused about the
Mhm.
anxiety of this topic and what to do from this, and there's a massive risk of over investing and getting nothing out of this. So when everything is at in your not in your favor, the best thing you can do is start a dialogue, and use that to slowly convince someone. I think from that point of view, this hits the ball like that this hits it right on at the core, that definitely it's a start a conversation, spread awareness, and then you try to understand from that. You became aware on what is their bottleneck that you thought,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
in our enterprise hierarchy, many times people are the bottleneck, right? So
Mhm.
we are the one who are slow or fast, or at least among in this podcast, you and me both are thinking in a different directions. So now imagine a entire corporation with hundreds or maybe thousands of us working together on a common goal, right? So it's always going to be we are always going to be bottleneck in enterprise growth. So that's why having a common conversation will at least get us on the same page. It helps the situation somewhat in that context. So open an analytics club. I think this is amazing. Like, we can sell our analytics club right in the middle of a section. This is like, wow. Like, thanks, Tao. Tao is now getting
Yeah.
creepier. It's like it's that like, so it's now doing its dirty tricks to sort of put our plugs in. But anyways, regardless, I think it is it's a must have for folks. Start an analytics club within your company. Do it right now. Don't think.
Yeah.
Send us that email right now. But anyways, I think that's it's definitely a good trick and good tip.
Yeah. I
Okay,
agree.
so now let's get to the data science Q&A, and this is some nerdy stuff. So
Yeah.
it talks about how to
Algorithms.
optimize algorithm, and it talks about parallel processing or fast algorithm. So I think this is another interesting area.
Yeah. Can you tell us about this
So
over here?
yeah, exactly. So everyone just start writing code right now. I'm just going to dictate what to write. But I think one of the thing that it talks about is that there's a wonderful quote about from Donald Knuth, that premature optimization is the root of all evil. So I think recently I was discussing in the idea of overfitting and underfitting models. I think
Mm.
in nowadays, right? So some businesses overfit the model, they overanalyze it, but the business is way different. So if you simulate an overfit, and to our audience who don't know what overfit underfit means, so overfitting means you um, test with too much sample data to structure an algorithm and then putting in real world scenario. So it's almost like it overfits the simulation model, but probably it might not be. And underfitting means doing less simulations and pretty much
Mhm.
just half baked and half analyzed model. So optimization is always that sort of slider of between, and I think it's interesting how it's saying parallel processing and faster algorithm. So I think all it is talking about is system, what system could do, and then what your software on it could do, right? So that's pretty much the optimization. So either you can have a faster architecture, or you could have or you could have faster software. So pretty much on the processing, it's just saying, hey, allocate the resources, lock the core, get a task, and then figure out if you want to send it to a single core or multi core, and then pretty much not the get a task and then find which core and lock and then release and lock and release. So maybe it's so I think it's, and by the way, this is just one of the way. And maybe I wouldn't recommend this for every business, right? So every business is different, but the point is the infrastructure that you have, and many times load balancer also helps in this case, right? Which how much you are using, which cores, how much you are using for parallel processing and sort of single processing, and from there on you can devise the distribution of the task. Some tasks takes multi-core, or some tasks takes even multi-processing, for that matter. Some tasks are just single, and even on that, certain tasks are low priority tasks, certain tasks are high priority tasks. So the more you know about the task when you're loading it, so it's just a matter of bring the allocate the hardware, install the logic, process it, and then that's pretty much like the best parallel processing. And by the way, uh, listeners, so we don't have to stick ourselves into a single solution. So because it's a very situational scenario. So, but all it is saying is fix the hardware and fix the software. In software, it's just pretty much talking about that there's always going to be a part of code that takes care of 90% of the processing or 80%. So it's talking about the Pareto's principle. You have to know which kind of code is used in how many scenarios, so you can optimize that ways. If something is not used that much, put it on cache. Like, if something is not changing, it's not worth processing every time. And similarly, in one of the example it's giving is in old C in basically old C days, C compiler treat while slower than for, because all while is saying that while I do this, so you're already processing something without even start jumping on the algorithm, right? While I do this, then do something. So it's already processing first and then doing something. Instead of in for, it's saying just start, and when you're at the end, then we'll think about when to stop, right? So it gets us in that. So like these are like some of the fine tweaks, but the main intent is fix algorithm and fix the hardware and treat them differently. So first you fix, and by the way, the more you know about algorithm on that hardware and the hardware on the algorithm, that will also have an influence. So that's why I think whenever we design an architecture, right, we have to understand the scenarios, the features, the business use cases, as well as the kind of queries, their capabilities, and from there on understanding the architecture, and then from architecture understanding the algorithms, like which architecture appreciate which algorithm. And by the way, it's not the right answer, although it is the answer. It's just one of the many answers, right? So the moment you hear about find me that algorithms, just ask more questions. Ask what kind of things you want to do. What is, I think it's how you can modularize that process into 3 stages, like hardware, software on it, and the business case it will support. That will define that 3 juncture of between the 3 will define how you can optimize an algorithm. It's, I think, I don't know, Maria, am I making any sense? You want to add something to
Yes,
it?
but can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So the bottleneck of premature optimization, would it be more on the hardware or the software side, or during the transition, or is it more like dealing with the talent and people aspect?
So
Where
bottleneck
would
for,
be
so
where would be
bottleneck
the
is an,
bottleneck for
yeah,
some of these kind of problems?
so I think it's if I wear my software development hat, so it's many time it's software's understanding of hardware. That is always the nightmarish scenario for a developer, right? We either under assume and over assume things. Like I imagine, like I remember one day that when I was with AOL, I did a query that for my entire company Google was shut down because I underestimated the the algorithm, and it was querying Google from inside, and it was just the firewall just blocked it or something. So I think it's my assumption that, and basically I ran out of memory and there was crash going on. So and even the Amazon AWS crash that happened recently, it's the same
Mm-hmm.
sort of configuration issue. So I think it's anything that and Maria, you have a good point that bridging scenarios, right? That has the maximum bottleneck, right? So I have a super highway on the algorithm and highway on the hardware end, but when we're talking, we need a tunnel to talk. Whenever there's an understanding tunnel, that's where the things get clogged and sort of misconstrued or sort of misanalyzed, and that's what caused the performance hiccup. Am I making any sense, by the way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, okay, awesome. So yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that
Thanks
that
for
was
explaining it.
so I think that was, but definitely it's a good lesson. And I want our listener to not focus on the answer that much, but understand what answer is trying to say, right? So the business logic, the software, and the hardware in unison create an optimized environment. So you have to understand. And Maria, you pointed beautifully that bottleneck could be anywhere. So understand the bottleneck and fix around that. I think first thing is, if you have the world's lamest code without bottleneck, that is much better than, and maybe that's the definition of an optimized code where there is no bottleneck, right? So that's an interesting take, Maria, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are
Yeah.
now on the side pane of this newsletter, and we are talking about our video of the week.
Yeah. This was a
So
great panel. Great
yes,
discussion on this panel. So shout out to all of the panelists.
yes, I agree. I think it's one of our, I think one of our unconferences happened in Boston a while back, and the content is still relevant. So Maria,
Yeah.
what's your take on the panel?
Yeah, there was a lot of different things that were brought up in the issues of finance and insurance and the analytics that are used for that, and the confusioning about insurance and what what different companies are doing and how it's portrayed from the customer side because they only see certain things as well. And so I think that in the discussion of the analytics, bringing up how the customers and what those analytics are used for the company is just a really great way to see from the different perspectives we had with the panelists that the different risk, the process, the cycle, like how the merging of all that data that they're collecting is talking to each other or stored. I mean, they really covered from the beginning to the end of the decision making with the insurance companies and finance and analytics. So it was
No, I
really
think
very informative, and I
rightly.
learned so much.
I think rightly said, Maria. I think I couldn't. I don't want to add anything to it. I think it's beautifully put. A very good conversation around the risks and what's happening in finance and insurance, and how analytics is happening there. I think it's a beautiful panel, by the way. So yes, must
Yeah, it's
listen.
a little behind the curtain scene. So if you're, wondering about your car insurance or other kinds of ways things are rated in this finance world, then you can take a look at that, and I'm sure it'll help you understand a little better about all the complexities that are involved.
Yes, beautiful. So now let's go to the quote of the week. So data is the new science. Big data holds the answer. So yeah, I think it's a great quote. So it puts a pressure on that. And Pat Gelsinger, I think it's an amazing influencer. By the way, he was with the EMC before. I think um, now he is with the consortium. What's it called? I forgot the name. Um it's between Cisco, EMC. I just totally got a mental block. It'll come to me, but I think it's a definitely a good analysis. So he's talking about data. Data is the new science, by the way. I think that's and big data holds the answers. So big data, I'm not sure, but data definitely holds an answer, right? So that's, I think, big is a very uh, it's a very interesting term. So, but a very progressive quote, a very sort of strategic quote. So I think I love it. It tells us something. What do you think, Maria?
I agree with the first part, the part about data is the new science. I kind of think that they can't be separated. You need data in order to start doing experiments and stuff
Right.
like that. So, it is part of the science. And I think that in all of the sciences, this scientific method being used as a data science, they're just all kind of the same thing called different things, but the answer, I do think that it is more than just in the data, because we have to have that decision making to be able to sift through it and to be able to figure out what's relevant. And so I think that the answer kind of is with how we make meaning of the data.
Hmm.
So I would say that.
That's very well said, Maria. I think I maybe you should have a quote here too. I think it's beautifully put. I like it, by the way. So let's
Thank
now
you.
let's get to the next part, the podcast of the week. Eloy says that I
Yeah.
think amazing guy. I think when I interviewed him, he was with News Corp, and we
Mhm.
discussed about sort of his understanding on team analytics, his understanding on team dynamics, his understanding of building up a team, and he was very open. He was, and I think
Yeah.
at that point he was. If I remember correctly, he's a second or third guy doing a podcast with us. So I said I was so blown away with sort of his candidate interview. He was very candid in sharing his thoughts, and I think all these executives, they have so much to share. Like each of them, over the time, we are realizing each of these executives bring their own sort of unique flavor to the problem. And I think that's
Mhm.
and it's so much fun. And everyone, I think, check Eloy's podcast out. He has some interesting bit for the emerging leaders, and I think it was a very good conversation where he talked about that, what the culture is important. He talked about how to build up a team. He talked about what are the good candidates you should look for. Lot of interesting insights. And right now I think he is with Sodexo, and I should actually talk to him again and see what Sodexo is doing in data science. I'll probably, after this podcast, I'll touch base with him. Amazing guy, an amazing podcast. I think must check him out. Good things to share, and I think, let us know what you think, Maria. What's your take?
Yeah, he was rarely transparent about his approach and very methodical on how he takes a look at the issue, at the problem, and focuses on it, and where to start from the end and how to build around that to get, the results you want. So I really appreciate his perspective.
Yes,
So
yes,
big shout
I
out.
do too. So good job there, Eloy. And I think we'll talk soon. So fact of the week: YouTube users upload 48 hours of new videos every minute of the day, and
Wow.
it's I think it's mind blowing. It's and
Yeah.
and I don't know how old is this. I think that it'll be more. This video is going on YouTube too, by the way. So
Yeah.
we are living and breathing on YouTube, I think, and we are very thankful with the platform that YouTube provided us and many people like us to share our thinking and thoughts with the world. And it has become sort of the ground for this new age of learning and spreading and sharing and collaborating. I think this is like, besides the data science point, there's a massive element of socio benefit to many of us. Like, we don't have to now. I remember, like, when I was in school, my only source of learning something is going to a library and looking at like 1970s or 1700s books and see what's going on and trust that what that guy was doing is right. It was
Yeah.
night. Now we can just open a YouTube and see the video in action, and I just have to just copy that guy, or replicate that guy, or take inspiration from that guy. The world is a lot simpler because of YouTube. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry I went
Yeah.
into a
Like
different rant,
No,
but yeah.
no, it's totally true, and I wonder sometimes how some of the high schoolers kind of appreciate that, because it was just always there for them. They could always just, if they wanted to look up something, and then they could look up something else, and it could be just within split seconds. Whereas before you had a whole process in between resources. You had to find one resource, then you'd have to figure out how to find the next one. So,
Right.
and it could be in a
It's
totally different
it's like
library and in a totally different place,
I
so there
agree.
was a lot of
It's
time in between, but now it's split second, and, it's, there's just no excuse for ignorance, anymore right now. If you have
yes.
access to the internet, you could kind of you can figure out how to learn even from there. So,
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right, and thank you YouTube for that, by the way. So it's definitely very helpful for all of us to be talking about this here. So that brings us to the closing of this podcast. That means it's time for our audience to close their ears and eyes if they don't want to hear our sales pitch. So I think
or to share it.
or share, like, and subscribe. So
Yeah.
stop everything. Stop driving. Put the car on the curb somewhere. Put the hazard lights on, and then subscribe, share, and like now. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just keep driving and stay safe. So yes. So analytics. So Tao is thankful to you. Our team is thankful to you for listening to our podcast and supporting us. It's a humbling experience for our team to see, like, we are seeing some numbers now. We are seeing that people actually watch it. I was thinking that only I and you, Maria, are the ones who are watching this podcast. But now I know there are more than at least 4 people. I think it was funny in one of the recent upload. I accidentally uploaded on a public instead of private, sort of on our podcast, and we instantly got, I think, about 90 hits within, like, it's like ridiculous. Really?
Yeah.
So thank you everyone, because I think your support is massively humbling. I think it's keeping the lights on for us. And if you or your friend or your friend's friend or your nana's friend or your uncle's friend is looking for a job, Tao could help. We could help. So look at the link here, tao.ai, and have them sign up. If they can't, then you sign up for them. But yes, spread away. If you're a business looking for amazing talent, we have some. So we could help. So with that, thank you so much, and thank you for staying with us. Till the next time, stay data driven. Bye bye.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Thank you, everyone.
I thought I was sick of home, but actually I was homesick. Never really knew that I would have to grow up so quick. I'm so uncomfortable, don't know anybody here. Just a couple dudes that I met once, that's it. And I go into the booth feeling nervous. Got butterflies in my stomach like I'm so worthless. Is the mic on? I don't know how to work this. Inside I'm breaking down, I hope I'm not up on a